Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for joining our discussion today about the cybersecurity landscape and 2024 predictions. I don't know about you, but I cannot believe that we're already at 2024. 2023 has gone by really, really quickly. And I remember when we were just doing the predictions for 2023, and we're going to talk about that and what was right and what was wrong and the like. But anyway, here we are on the precipice of 2024. It does turn out that in 2023, AI was a big deal. And there are a bunch of other things that we're going to talk about. But want to say hello to everybody and happy December. And I hope that your December is off to a great start. If you're in the Pacific Northwest, I can tell you it is off to a very soggy start.
And dark.
Yes, we are here. Just for people who don't live in the Seattle area, I can tell you that we call this, or in the whole Pacific Northwest, that we call this season the Great Dark because it's dark.
The long
dark. So things to know. There's a chat on the right. Hop into the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. If you're joining from somewhere warm like LA or Texas or something like that, just say hi. I don't want to hear how warm it is there. You can mute the chat if you want. There's a little bell on the top with a line through it, or not a line. If it's going ding ding, you can mute it. Everybody who registered will get a recording of this. It'll send out an automatic email. And we'll also send out the slide deck afterwards. So what our agenda is today is we're going to talk about the 2023 predictions, and what was right, what was wrong. We're going to look back at the year in review, and then we're going to talk about our 2024 predictions. And funny enough, I always put Q&A at the end, but really, y'all know this. Interrupt in the side. Let us know what your questions are, your thoughts as we go. And I love interrupting these guys as they're talking. If you don't know us, Critical Insight defends organizations against cyber attacks. We focus on critical services, but really work with all sorts of different organizations. And today is a really important day. We announced a large evolution of how we help our customers, now providing a GRC tool, a risk and compliance tool, so that customers can measure their entire security programs, outside of a SOC, inside of a SOC, measure the entire programs. And we've upgraded the tools in our security operations center to be a managed XDR company, and our customers can now see their data, can now see how attacks go through the system, and how we stop them. Fred, you want to add anything about that?
Yeah, I just want to say that really we're exposing the things that our analysts have been using and to our customers. So you're going to have the ability to have the same views into the data that our analysts have, and the ability even to do searching and manipulation of that data, so you can do your own poking around and understanding what's going on. So we're really exposing all these fantastic tools that our analysts have and use every day to everybody. That's our customers.
And we'll have a webinar about that next week. If you haven't gotten a link to that and you want to join, shoot me an email, jake@criticalinsight.com, and we'll be happy to do that. If you don't know who we are, Mike Hamilton and Fred Langston, both founders of the company. Mike is our CISO. He's the former CISO of the city of Seattle. Fred is our chief product officer, and I run marketing, host our events, and tell only bad jokes. All right, let's get into it. Mike, what did we say last year?
Okay, so last year what we did was we split things up into a few categories. One of them is state actors. As I think most people know, I do the Daily Blast every day, and so I ingest a tremendous amount of news, and from that draw trends, inferences, speculation about where things are going. So this is what we said last year. So the U.S. will apprehend one or more of the sanctioned individuals, causing diplomatic tension. Well, you know what? It's not creating the diplomatic tension, I thought, but yeah, we're snatching them. We just got the TrickBot guy, just pled guilty. So, that seems to be working. And that, I think that's part two of the the national strategy, right? There's a role in there for the Department of Justice. There's a role for the DOD. There's a role for Treasury, and Department of Justice goes out and snatches people, and that's what they've been doing. More attempts at internet balkanization. So if you will remember, a couple of years ago, Russia did an experiment where they unplugged themselves from the internet to see if they could operate internally and not be part of the global network. And I thought this is going to be tried by more countries. Frankly, I think it should be tried by our country, but we'll get to that. No, that didn't happen. But what did happen is there is a whole lot more surveillance of online activity in countries that are run with authoritarian governments to control their users. It's really gotten out of control in a couple of places, China in particular, but not exclusively. Russia will have its infrastructure disrupted as a demonstration of seriousness. So, yes, this has happened in the context of the war going on in Ukraine. Did Ukraine do it? Did we do it? Did volunteers do it? It happened. I think finding fingerprints there is a little more difficult than normal just because of the fog of war. Operational technology, I mean, this is verbatim what we said last year. Operational technologies will be disrupted or wiped, likely in the U.S. water sector. Looks like we nailed that one. There's ongoing investigations for as many as 9 is what's been reported. Water utilities disruptions are being investigated right now by the Department of Justice and Homeland Security. Nations will come to the table to discuss norms. Yep. China and Russia will try to inhibit that progress. Yep, that happened. China will play a bigger role in manipulating the next election, starting with early disinformation. Yep, early disinformation. It's already been reported that China is now pointing a lot of their disinformation at not so much the election coming up, but competition with the United States, and also for Chinese dissidents that are living in the United States. More wide-scale fraud from China. Yep. China actors are now engaging in fraud and financial theft, not as state actors, but their population is just getting into the business of fraud, just like a whole bunch of other people are. And, you know, again, the lowering of the bar to get into the whole cybercrime business is facilitating a lot of this. Any comments from you guys on any of this?
Well, I mean, I
Yeah,
think, go ahead, Fred, and then I'll
yeah,
talk about the water stuff.
yeah. I want to talk about it's not just China and Russia that's involved in the balkanization and increased censorship. In fact, one of the largest democracy in the world, which is not the United States, by the way, actually is imposing significant controls driven by the executive branch to put censorship around what is being put on the internet and building laws that are making it hard to exercise free speech. So it's not just China and Russia. There's a trend all over towards an increased level of kind of censorship and control.
This conversation's been going on in this country for a long time, right? One person's censorship is another person's attempt to get factual information out, right? And there's a whole lot of this going on, because people want to believe what they want to believe, whether it's factual or not, and presenting them with those facts then means you're censoring my thoughts. I mean, here it's even getting out of control.
So one thing that, I think you were a little right about and a little bit wrong about is the water sector and how it happened, right? The really interesting thing about I think the prediction was that bad actors would specifically go after the water sector. And what has happened is that Iranian actors have gone after Israeli companies. And when I say Israeli companies, I don't mean owned by the state of Israel. I mean companies that have Israeli founders based in Israel. And in doing so, we're able to break into their software, use their software to then breach water facilities. So the breach of the water facilities happened, but it happened a little bit differently. And it's not actually completely clear to me that the Iranian actors meant to break into water facilities or whether it was just an added benefit for them.
So that's true. about the ones that we know that involved Unitronics PLCs.
Mm-hmm.
But there is up to 9. They said it's a
Mm-hmm.
single digit, all being investigated now for being disrupted, and we don't know that that was the vector in each and every one of those.
That's right. Well, we don't,
because they're not saying, they're not even identifying who they are.
right. Likely, but yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
All right. What else? Last year, technical.
Okay, so here's the technical part of this. When I said Microsoft will improve their license policy, if you will remember at the time, I was kind of going off on how reprehensible it is for Microsoft to make you buy your security log events that they possess, right? Stuff happening on your network. And so you had to get the right kind of license to even have access to that stuff. They did pull that back. And it happened after a couple of very key widely reported compromises that I can't remember right now. And maybe somebody else can remember this. When that happened, they said, "Oh, well, we should really start providing these logs to everybody," and they did. Okay, so we got that one. Zero Trust will replace EDR and XDR, which replaced blockchain at the Gartner peak of inflated expectations. Actually, what happened was, and this happened quickly. Does anybody know what is at the peak of inflated expectations right now? Is AI. So the buzzword bingo didn't work out for me on that one. People will adopt parts of Zero Trust, but not all of it. That's true. Not everything, and it turns out to be extremely difficult to always authorize access to a resource every time that resource is requested, and actually do this right. But there are parts of Zero Trust that are being adopted, right? So it's got to be multi-factor authentication. If your device changes, if your location on Earth changes, if anything changes, you're going to get challenged. So parts of that, yes, have been implemented. Either Chat GPT will not become sentient, or I will welcome our new robot overlords. It did not become sentient. That was kind of a throwaway. I don't know. Some people think it has. But it's debunked every time. Digital God is coming. Jason. Supply chain attacks will continue or increase, especially in the health sector. Yes, and in fact, during the first part of this year, we did our H1 healthcare data breach report, and that's exactly what we found. We found 2 significant things, actually, is supply chain attacks are becoming preferred, and there's a shift away from phishing to vulnerability exploit as an initial access vector. So we nailed that one. I gave that one 2 check marks. Maybe that compensates for Zero Trust.
And I just want everybody to know Mike gave himself the check mark. So Mike gave himself 2 check marks here. Okay, keep going, Mike.
Okay, full automation, not going to solve your problems. We are automating things like crazy around here. And one thing that Fred and I mused about was managed automation going to become a thing. It has not become a thing. That's definitely a no.
Mm-hmm.
Cloud security posture management tools and services are becoming table stakes. I don't know if they're table stakes, but they sure are effective at finding your unprotected S3 buckets, everybody. I think in the upcoming year, it will be more of table stakes. Everybody's just got to watch their configurations out there because it's so easy to make a mistake. And then this last one is Fred's. Cloud workload protection platforms and cloud native application protection platforms are the future. Well, I think they're still in the future. Fred, do you want to comment on that at all?
Well, if you're somebody who's living in the cloud, you probably absolutely already adopted these. So if you're a cloud first company, I'm saying you're already monitoring your workloads for secrets and SBOMs and all these things that we need to all get relevant or get fluent in. Understanding how the CI/CD pipeline works, how to secure it throughout that. It's a whole new paradigm. So I think it's on its way because people are starting to realize there's a whole new way to secure my assets and how I go about doing that. So it's on its way.
Mike, you became
The
a
chat is cracking me up.
so and Mike, I do think one of the other things here is Microsoft did improve their license policy, but it has a long way to go.
Oh, yeah.
They also made it more confusing, adding more letters to various licenses and
Renaming everything.
renaming everything and taking some functionality away from what is the equivalent of an E3 license and only putting it in E5. I think they, so I think you're right that they did rethink their license policy, but I don't think all of the changes were positive.
Well, I think if you're a government, the fact that the G level licenses are crippled, if you will, compared to the E
Right.
level
Yeah.
licenses, I just come on, Microsoft. We need our government to function here.
Yeah.
I
And I
don't
recently
understand that.
found out about F level licenses. What the
Yeah,
heck
F
is
is the
that?
brand new one. That's brand new.
What
Yeah.
is that? Well,
Isn't F
never
is F
mind.
is
I know what's in my head.
F is frontline workers. So,
Correct.
like, if you're in a hospital, it's the one that you give to the nurses. If you're presumably in a school district, it would be like the teachers. I believe that's how I've seen F licenses used.
Okay, so
Um,
like in a local
although
government,
I really do have
tree
to,
trimmers would get those.
I really do have to
Yes.
deeply question as the branding and marketing person, calling something an F license. I mean, you just open yourself up to all the things. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Mike Sloan, he nailed it. Yeah.
All right, next slide.
Okay, so last year's predictions around regulatory stuff. So both government regulators and insurance companies dictate improved security posture. Yeah. Okay, that one. Come on, that one was too easy. The federal government will become a reinsurer. That did not happen, but there is more conversation and there's serious hearings starting to go on around this topic. And I think eventually this is going to happen. We have to preserve our ability to transfer risk. And we've seen some of these events that are near global in scale, and things are only going to get worse. I mean, everybody can agree this year has just been off scale with everything, and it's only going to get worse. And so this bit about the government having a program that's similar to one called TRIP, the terrorism reinsurance program, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some nutcase knocks down your building, your insurance company doesn't cover that. The government will cover that as the backstop to that insurance company, because if that happens a lot, insurance companies are gone. They just won't, insure those things. That's why you can't get, flood insurance in Florida or fire insurance in California, because they were just taking a bath on that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
CISA will continue to work with the sector-specific agencies and regulate using the NIST cybersecurity framework. So that one was a slam dunk. Since last year when we predicted this, Health and Human Services has new guidance for the healthcare sector. You saw everybody knows what the SEC has done. NCUA for credit unions, also mandatory reporting. The TSA has given new guidance to rail, aviation, pipelines. The EPA tried to do it and got shouted down. Actually, they were sued by a couple of Republican states. They were trying to get the water sector to do a cyber assessment with their sanitary surveys, which are already required. They got sued. That was an unfunded mandate. Apparently, somebody can't fill out a spreadsheet without financial support. I don't know. So now that they tried that, and this trend may be pulling back. There may be more and more pushback against the rulemaking process and the sector-specific agencies. Although having a bunch of water sector organizations hit right after that happened is probably a forcing function to take it back the other way, back towards regulation. So we're just going to have to watch that one. Republicans will pull back on some regulation. I just talked about that. Yep, water sector was the victim, and I expect more. Insurance companies will continue to move the goalposts. Yep. Real-time monitoring may be required. Nope, not yet. There are companies beginning to emerge that are combined managed security and insurance. And I do believe that is the way forward. There is no better way to evaluate risk. We don't have a 200-year-old actuarial table for cyber events. So the best way to measure that risk is to do it in real time. Your self attestations and your questionnaires are one thing, but monitoring your network traffic to see what kind of risky business goes on there is much better in order to use as a pricing tool. Any comment on any of this?
You bet. So on the federal government, I think it's also interesting to note that there have been committees meeting, and one of these big committees made statements that not only are we advising never to pay a ransom, but we're actually considering legislation that will prevent anyone from paying a ransom. And the logic that they're putting behind this, which I agree with, is it takes longer to recover with an encryption key provided by a ransomware provider than it does to recover from backups. Anyone, if you have your backups properly set up, you will recover faster from backups than you ever can by paying a bunch of money and getting a key and then trying to decrypt your stuff. So they're saying, people, get great backups, make them immutable, and don't pay the ransom, right? And everyone wins. Everyone wins. So I expect the government to jump in here, but that may, Mike, to your point, force them to think about the reinsurance component. If they take away that ability to pay a ransom, maybe they do need to put in a reinsurance program.
Yeah, but remember the new hook now, right? We've already seen a ransomware gang file a complaint with the SEC about failure to report through 8K filing, right?
Yeah.
And look, if they've got records and those records have privacy information, listen, you pay us or we make this public and you get a class action suit. Which do you want to live through?
Yeah.
Right?
They're going to live through both. They'll live through both, right? Nobody skates, right? Nobody skates out of this, right? You're going to have to report. I mean, certainly you don't want to be like the Uber CEO and go to jail because you're going to hide this stuff that you paid a bunch of ransomware, right? Nobody wants to live that over again, right?
Mike, I really feel like if you had predicted this year a ransomware gang is going to use the SEC, you would have won some prediction prize.
Yeah.
You should have predicted that. I'm very disappointed in you.
Okay, my bad. Well, let's see what we can do for see what the predictions are for this year. There may be something in there.
All right.
Okay, so the big events of the year. I'm going to leave out the hackings, right? The gigantic supply chain hacks, the MGM and Caesars casinos. All right, we all know about that stuff. All right, this is what I think were the big events this year, and this is again based on me ingesting a lot of news every day. So CISA initiatives and communication were very good this year. Really, they're putting out bulletins in a timely way. They came up with the known exploitable vulnerabilities list. There has been specific guidance given to different sectors, health sector in particular. So they've done a great job this year. The insurance industry really is flailing around this whole cyber insurance business.
Flailing. So here's what has happened in insurance policies is they've said, okay, we'll cover this. We won't cover this. You have to pay more for this. You pay more for this. With, insurance rates now flattening out. I think that's one of the big things here is cyber insurance rates are not continuing to go up at 300% year to year, which has caused a caving of companies that like startups that only provide cyber insurance, or they're getting bought for less than they wanted to be valued for by the big insurers. So are they flailing? I think they figured out a business model that works for them that has changed the market.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not just how they price it, it's what they're requiring and what they will, right. And to your point, what they will and won't cover. They're still kind of bumping around in this stuff, figuring out what their way is. Mm-hmm. And, everybody's waiting for the giant event to happen that, they got to make good and pay out on. And then they're going to walk away from it like, Florida, State Farm in Florida walked away from flood insurance.
Yeah.
Okay, ransomware. Boy, these guys are making a lot of money. The demands are way up. One thing is particularly fascinating to me, and there's a corollary to it coming as well: the rise of activists.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, and it's activists, people doing this for
Hi, Iran.
social cause. Yeah,
Yeah.
hi Iran, how you doing? Um, has anybody heard of the Goodwill ransomware gang? This is one that I think is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Goodwill ransomware gang operates out of India, and they will ransomware your organization. And in order to get the decryption key, you must supply evidence that you've bought food for poor kids. Okay, so the activists and the way that they have tooled up. Right. Remember in the beginning, there was the Ukrainian IT army. And it was like, defacements and DDoS. Oh, no, not anymore. Not anymore. Now they're breaking into the propaganda ministry to, steal what they're going to say. So activists, class action suits. Holy cow. We have done this to ourselves. We have created laws that allow people to sue, not if your record was stolen and used in a fraudulent way, if your record was stolen. And we're going to have to do something about the litigation here, because especially in the health sector, every time there's a records breach, if there's a class action that follows that, first of all, if the hospital got ransomwared along with records, it can't operate and they have to divert ambulances. And there have been studies now that say that the people who are already admitted to the hospital have worse health outcomes. There's all that. And then here comes the class action suit, right? The ambulance chasing, and in this case, that's literal, attorneys who are waiting for these things to happen, and the class action suit, and the hospitals can't survive. So we're doing this to ourselves.
I'd like to point out that, and we may even have some folks on this webinar from the agency that I'm going to allude to. A large hospital was, or a regional hospital was compromised about a month ago. Today, I got an advertisement from a law firm saying, if you're at all involved in this, please join our class action suit. So you're getting spam from these attorneys for class actions within weeks of these breaches happening. So
I'm going to go on mute here.
Very frightening, frankly.
Okay. All right. Criminals using regulatory and litigation pressure. Now, the filing with the SEC, in the beginning, they would get your documentation on insurance and know exactly where to set the extortion demand so that your insurance company would pay. And then that has morphed to the SEC complaint being filed. And I am sure that in the upcoming year, we're going to see class action used as a threat, right? Either pay us or the class action happens. And that may require a change in tactics, where when something like this, when records are stolen, it's not made public right away. And they don't, the gang doesn't tease it on their disclosure site. Teen criminals emerge. So this is really, I think, a sign of just something larger. So, especially Gen Z, hey, don't go into debt to go to university. It doesn't pay off. Income inequality is such that 10 people have all the money, and that's the way it's always going to be. The planet's trying to throw us out of here because of what we've done to it. Why not go into crime? You were born with a computer in your hand. So, MGM and Caesars, it is reported, were done by teen and 20-somethings. This population is going to explode, and it's not just them. At this point, it's anybody who knows how to move around on the dark web and find ransomware as a service and affiliate models that you can lean into. Everybody's becoming a criminal. It's just too easy to do now. And, at some point, I may consider it myself. North Korean weapons funding through extortion. This was known, but it's been reported so many times this year that I felt important to add that. Yes, they fund weapons through stealing money, especially cryptocurrency. It's some extortion. It's mostly theft. The state local cyber grant program was kind of a big deal and still is. Although, as I've looked around the country and talked to other states, what I'm finding is that our state did a super good job with this. And that is not true in a lot of other places. I've seen some states that absolutely did it wrong, and I can't believe that FEMA would even approve the method they used. Here, we're just going to throw a lot of stuff on a big roster here. Pick what you want. That's not the way it's supposed to work. The Russians hacked Danish energy industry and caused a big outage and a lot of consternation. And the Russians hacked Canadian energy. And in fact, that story was really interesting because the intelligence agency, Canadian Intelligence, along with the Americans, said, hey, we think the Russians are going to attack our energy infrastructure. And then a couple of days later, a refinery got hit and associated pipelines. And the reason was that Canada was going to increase their export of energy, specifically liquefied natural gas, to the EU to compensate for the EU not wanting to pay Russia for their energy anymore. So that pissed off the Russians. And then a couple of weeks later, Suncor got hit, which is their large chain of gas stations, and cards wouldn't work at the pump anymore. And that went on, that persisted for a couple of weeks. So, first of all, the intelligence was spot on. Mm-hmm. Number two, yeah, Russians are going after energy infrastructure. We saw deepfakes in political ads, although every time I see a politician speak, I think it's pretty fake words coming out of their mouth anyway. Chinese technology companies have been banished. That actually started the year before, but the number of companies you can't do business with now is very large. It's more than 100. And we had the largest DDoS attacks in history. Okay, so again, we stayed away from the giant records breaches, specifically in the health sector,
and some of the and some of the DDoS attacks against healthcare organizations were activist, political in nature.
That's right.
So, yeah,
and DDoS attacks against with war going on in Israel, Gaza, sites that are trying to collect funds to help people in those countries, they're being DDoSed. So it's like everybody's got these tools now. And
I do want to quickly point out that when North Korea, about the cryptocurrency, that is to the tune of $90 billion in crypto last year. That's more of the gross national product than about 30% of the nations on planet Earth. That's why a country with essentially no natural resources can literally build atomic intercontinental ballistic missiles, because they're stealing enormous amounts of money.
So all right. Whoa,
hang on. It was reported that cybercrime globally is worth $8 trillion a year last year in 2022. All right, that makes it the third largest economy on Earth. So it's not just the North Koreans. Russia is under a lot of sanctions too. Nobody's buying their oil and gas except when they go and they sell it to China cheap. And I think a big part of their income is also coming through all this criming.
Yep. All right. So now somebody told me I should do a drum roll. Drum roll 2024, Mike, predictions.
Okay. We are going to see infrastructure disruption with Chinese fingerprints on it for sure. Yesterday, another warning. They are slowly getting into our energy and other infrastructures so that when the thing in Taiwan happens, the trigger gets pulled over here to give us something else to worry about, right? So that's going to happen. And it will likely be our energy infrastructure. And that's actually what's being reported. That's where they're getting in. Mm-hmm. The election will be measurably manipulated / disrupted. And I can say this because a thing happened in Ecuador during a recent election. There's a method of voting called UOCAVA voting. That stands for Uniformed Overseas Citizens Accessible Voting Act, UOCAVA. All right. And so if you're deployed military or if you're an expat living in Paris, living your best life, this is how you vote. And it's basically like a DocuSign mechanism. So basically all you do is smash it with DDoS and that don't work. And that happened in Ecuador. And so there are a total of 3 or 4 companies in the United States that provide this kind of voting access, right? A state can contract whoever they want because it's not a national system. And I believe that is going to be hit. So that's what I mean by measurably. It's also going to be manipulated like crazy. We're getting pretty good at finding the fingerprints of disinformation purveyors. And if you will remember in the last election, much too late, but the Department of Defense melted the Internet Research Agency, which was Russian disinfo campaign. State support for criminal actors will result in sanctions. Okay, you can't hide behind criminals forever. All right, Russia, we know it's you, and there is state collusion and coordination and cooperation going on. And because of that, we are going to be able to say, you are supporting all of these, crimes going on here and these disruptions going on, and we're going to sanction them for that. We're running out of sanctions, but we'll come up with something. The U.S. will start to treat our logical border like a physical border. All right. Don't make jokes about borders. What we're going to do, I think, at least we're going to be thinking about this, and this is going to take years to figure out. But if we don't start to enforce a standard of behavior on our side of the demarc, right, and then have an escalating set of penalties for bad behavior up to and including locking you out, we're not going to get out of this problem. We're just not going to. There's so much public damage done by these actions versus the private responsibility to make them not happen, and that disconnect has got to be addressed. And there's one person in Congress, and that is the Republican chair of I think it's the Homeland Security Committee, said this. We need to treat that border like other borders. So I think we're going to make some progress on this. India and Pakistan are going to go at it with each other, and there's a low grade thing that's been going on for quite a while. And energy infrastructure has been disrupted, dams have been disrupted. That's going to escalate, and I think NATO is actually going to invoke Article 5. I think that the NATO countries are sick and tired of getting cybered all the time, and they're going to collectively do something about that. Any comments?
Well, Jen in the chat says, how many of the activists are really fictitious personas carrying out state-sponsored goals?
That's what I'm saying.
Right?
That's what I'm saying. Jen, you're right on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 50-50 on that. I mean, I think that, being sponsored by the state, I think activists without state sponsorship will do some.
There's plenty of those. There are plenty of those.
Yeah.
In general, they're not stealing stuff, though. That's not what activists do. They will be disruptive. But what I'm talking about is all the ransomware and, the extortion going on. I'm sure the Russian government's getting a cut of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd like to jump in on the logical border question, because I don't think that's even remotely possible. When companies, multinational companies, networks are intermeshed across every continent on Earth except for maybe Antarctica, I don't see how you unmesh that to build a border inside of corporate networks. I just don't seeing that being possible. So, I mean, I do know that there are, places you could put enforcement points. I know our government, Chinese, France, they have enforcement points where they actually sniff traffic and see what's going on.
It's doable. It would be hugely disruptive. And this is what people say. They'll go, oh, well, you lock out a country because, there's so much, criminal activity coming out of that country. All they're going to do is they're going to go jump off from another country.
Exactly.
Okay, that is true. But if you have locked them out, you have locked out their banks and their retail and all of that stuff. And those people will go yell at the government and say, do something about the criminals so that we can do business with the U.S.
Or they're going to say, forget about the U.S. blocking us. It's open commerce, and tell them to get out of the way and let us do business. Well, right? That's the other side, right?
Now you know why they don't let me make public policy anymore.
Correct.
Let's continue. Okay. This is already happening. AI is replacing first-tier analysts. So that means a couple of things. It means there's going to be an improved velocity to investigations. It also means that the entry-level analyst position is going to have to get better, because entry-level means you're going to be the second tier after the AI does all of the initial investigation pass, colors the ticket, and hands it off to somebody. Then you're going to have to dig a little deeper.
But I mean, I do think in look, I work in marketing. Everyone in marketing, everyone in security. It's not going to be. It's less. Are you replaced by AI? And part of the job is, can you use some of the AI tools, whether it's generative AI or any of the others? It's about. It's going to be.
This is actually a different case than that, Jake.
Yeah.
This is actually truly replacing that person. So there's no human involved in that step.
But somebody's still going to have to check it. Somebody's still going to have to say.
That's the next tier
It's
analyst.
the next step. That's the tier 2 analyst.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Right. So that whole entry level thing where, okay, give me the reputation of these IP addresses and the provenance of these domain names, and have these tactics been observed elsewhere? That's all going to happen. That's all automated by the AI, which is just going to go out and ingest everything it needs to know about that. And then it's going to hand the ticket off. Well, what happens then? Investigation's got to go deeper. So that analyst is going to have to be more than entry level. We only got through one bullet point. Wow. Okay. Gen AI scams, larger. So business email compromise turns out to be a bigger money loser in the United States than ransomware. This is true. And these losses are actually going to get larger because as AI is trained on who in your organization can move money, who in your organization can authorize the movement of money, what businesses do you do business with, where there's an exchange of funds, that is going to be very useful in not only targeting for business email compromise, but facilitating it. Criminal corporations, they're almost, it's almost as an as a service model now. You know, the developers, these corporations that are raking in all this money, they don't really do any work anymore. They just kind of maintain their base of software so that everybody else can use it. More people will turn to cybercrime. To my previous point, we're just seeing this happen all over the place. Adaptive malware using artificial intelligence. There are sites now, Chaos GPT, another one, I can't remember. They're saying that they have the ability to do AI-based adaptive malware now. We haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure that's going to show up. Detection analytics using AI will begin to work. So we will be able to start fighting back here. I don't have any examples of that now, but I believe that that'll come to pass in the upcoming year. Robots will start fighting in at least one war. And I don't mean drones that are operated by, operators on the other side of the world. We've done that for a while. I mean completely autonomous robots doing the fighting. And military satellites are going to be attacked. We're inching closer to that all the time, which, thank goodness, we have Space Force. Okay, any comments on this?
I mean, Fred, you go ahead, and then I have one on the satellites.
Yeah, I want to point back. Mike did I think it was with the Wall Street Journal. You did a commentary as a rebuttal to one of the great minds of AI. Somebody out, one of these persons has been on the road talking about the end of the world because of AI, and you debunked it. And I can't lean in any more into that concept that we are looking at a Hollywood-style hype around AI destruction. This AI overlords and sentience and all ludicrous concepts. We're ascribing human anthropomorphic motivations to a machine, and that just doesn't translate. It's great for sci-fi, and the real world doesn't translate. So,
yeah. If Skynet becomes self-aware, you just pull the power cord out.
Thank you. Exactly. But the other part of this is, yes, the transformative effects of AI will be profound. So it's not be scared of, our AI overlords. It's, hey, where's my job and my career and my future going to be in a world where AI is evolving and changing everything? So that's the change. It's not when you read these, we're going to be bowing down to, artificial intelligence in 10 years is a joke, frankly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Christopher says you'd kill the first sentient AI, which is the greatest question anyone has
without
ever asked.
thinking twice about it.
Which is the greatest thing anyone has ever asked Fred. Well done. Hey, I have one more thing to add to the not about AI. Because as somebody else said in the chat, if you're taking a drink every time we say AI, you are plastered right now, and you are not
That's the
sentient.
RSA game, yeah.
Yeah, you're fully pickled by that
Right,
point.
right. The satellites thing. So one of the things that happened during the beginning of the Ukraine war was Russia took out their internet and they got internet from Starlink. The other thing that's going on right now is, does Starlink provide internet to Gaza when Israel takes it away? It's a very there's a lot there. And I think we see a real attack on Starlink. I think that's coming, because they've developed a way of communicating around the world that is not owned by a government. But we'll
Well,
see.
here's an interesting corollary to that. If they've been mapping out radio frequency emanations out of Sevastopol, which is where the Russian fleet is in Crimea is headquartered,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a giant radio frequency blank spot. I forget how many miles wide over that, where if you go into that, everything is being blocked, jammed, and stopped. So no GPS, no radar signals, radios being jammed. There's literally ways for them to do this without attacking military satellites. So while I think it's if an all-out war that would happen, I think it would take all-out war before military satellites would actually be attacked,
I don't know,
because they
man.
also cause other huge problems for all other satellites, including your own. As long as you'd have to be in the right geostationary orbit to miss the debris field that would be
Yeah.
created.
Yeah. Just so Mike, Fred, and I think no on this one, but you'll probably give yourself 2 check marks in a year. We'll have to see.
I probably will.
All right, regulatory, everybody's favorite topic.
Okay, yeah. Again, I think there's going to be pushback, right? It started with the EPA getting sued by a couple of states, right? Everybody is, now being told you have to do mandatory reporting. Governance has become a really big issue, and the failure, to adhere to these the rules coming out of the sector-specific agencies, right? If you are in a critical sector, if you don't do that, then this issue of negligence being brought up is starting to show its head more and more. So I think that there's going to be pushback on this stuff. The investment in security doesn't make money for the company. It's a cost center, unless you use it as some kind of competitive differentiator. And we've tried to use all kinds of market arguments to do this, and none of them really pan out. On the other hand, states are going to follow New York's lead. So New York has the DFS, the Department of Financial Services, and they have their own equivalent to Health and Human Services. And both of those have regulated finance and healthcare in New York State very, very similar to the way that the SEC and HHS do at the federal level. But if Congress is so dysfunctional that every time we have a change of government, that we're going to undo the thing you did, we're going to put it back, that kind of dysfunction is not good for anybody. And so if this is done at the state level and other states do it the way New York is, we end up with much more stable regulatory environments than I think is what is starting to emerge now at the federal level. Again, startups, insurance, and full-time monitoring, I do think that's going to happen. The regulatory focus has historically been all about preparation and your processes and your controls and all of this stuff. That is going to shift from trying to buy down the likelihood of a bad event to managing the impact of a foreseeable bad event, right? You got to take that punch and get up off the mat. We will get a national privacy statute because all the states doing it the way that they're doing it is what's ending up with all these class action suits, and somebody's going to address that. I think so. Okay, this one's a little too easy. Data brokers are going to be regulated, right? Data brokers are the ones that take all of the information that's coming off all those goofy apps you have on your phone, and that gets aggregated with these brokers who will sell it to anyone. Well, that is commonly being used to circumvent the warrant process by law enforcement. Congress has started to take this up. Data brokers are going to get regulated. And executive negligence is going to become an enforcement mechanism that we see more and more and more. So, and I'm not talking about SolarWinds and the CISO being accused of securities fraud for covering up an event that would have caused presumably a drop in stock value. I'm talking about something in the legal profession called the standard of foreseeability. And if you fail to take action to mitigate a foreseeable risk, you are guilty of negligence. And that's, we're just going to see that all the time. PayPal getting sued for negligence right now for exactly that. Okay. Comments?
Fred, you first, then me. I have comments.
Yeah, I think the national privacy statute will not happen. I think there is way too much discord amongst what people believe is appropriate. And there are differing motivating factors. If you look at some of the factions in Congress, they're really leaning into kind of the personal privacy protection. There's other ones that are looking at it more from a national security perspective. There's all sorts of different competitive things. So I don't think the country will come to a national standard. I think we're going to have a patchwork of state laws.
Like we have the patchwork of data breach reporting laws in 50 states.
That's right.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's just nuts. That's nuts.
Yeah, that's where we're going to end up. I hate to say it. Yeah.
So, and I think two things. Number one, I know that we've started to see a little bit of a revolt. That EPA, the first one here from sector-specific agencies. I don't see it. I don't see it for all the others. Like I've seen hospitals talk about pushing back on HHS, and it just doesn't come to pass because the problem is so big. I don't see it peeling back for others. I think that one's going to be wrong. I think your last one, the executive negligence, will be right. I think we're going to see a lot more of that, and I think it's going to be. I think there are going to be a lot of CISOs. There are going to be a lot of, I think there's going to be board members. I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming this year, for sure.
Remember, CISOs are not necessarily, and in many places, not part of the executive suite.
In fact, almost never.
Almost never, right? So keep that in mind. Even though they have the C in front of it, they're not usually part of the official C suite.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see a lot of that.
Well, I think it's going to be the CEOs. That's what I think.
I do
the
too.
CEO is going to be finally. You don't get to skate on cybersecurity, Mr. and Mrs. CEO anymore.
But they didn't know. They didn't know there was a threat.
This is why.
How would they know?
This is why the regulators are all leading into governance as something that they want to see. Right? You need to have some kind of committee organization that will adjudicate identified risk, assign a disposition to it, right? Accept, avoid, mitigate, or transfer through insurance. And you're going to have executives put their fingerprints on that decision because, it's IT's job, or, we just buy a bunch of insurance ain't going to cut it anymore.
Hey, and I want to say something else on regulatory and two things. Number one is NIST 2.0 is about to come out, or NIST CSF 2.0 is about to come out. And two things there. Number one is if you are a customer of ours, an MDR customer, one of the things that's remember in the beginning, we talked about all the new things we're giving our customers, the platform, the risk and compliance platform, you will be able to map your security posture to that. So if that appeals to you, let us know. Also, Hamilton told me this morning he has a new manual spreadsheet for NIST CSF 2.0. So if you're not a customer and you want that, you could do it by hand. But certainly that's one of the reasons we did that is to match this, that we added that to our platform, and we added that for our customers is because of these regulatory predictions. All right. Now I have 3 things that everybody needs to get right. Of course, prepare for an attack, detect one quickly, respond decisively. Do folks have other questions? If so, put them in the chat. We want to know. I do want to tell folks as we get towards the end of this here, my email address is there. And we're going to do final thoughts in a second. And I have one more thing for you all, so don't leave yet. But my email address is there. If you have questions, if you want to argue with Mike, if you want to argue with me, send me an email. Always happy to do it. You can't argue with Fred. He's too busy. But me, Mike, we got plenty of time to argue with you. Number 2, is we have surveys at the end of all of our webinars. I'm going to put the link in the chat. We appreciate where everybody takes the survey, and everybody who takes the survey, we donate to an IT charity. So please take the survey. We want to know your opinions. And I put a thing in the survey this time. If you think we missed a prediction, you can put it in there. We want to know.
Definitely.
We want to know what we missed. So
and we'll do it in next year's. We'll bring them up in next year's because we're going to do this again next year.
Right, with or without your name. Just kidding. All right. And I want to remind folks there's that webinar next week where we're talking about the new platform and how we're improving our customer experience and how you can match those 2024 predictions and get better security. All right, let's do final thoughts. Fred, you first, then Mike. Fred, go ahead.
Yeah. So after 20 plus years, every year doing these, it never quite gets easier. You think you know what's going to happen, and there's always a couple things that surprise you. So I look forward every year to the surprises that come, as opposed to being right on predictions.
Awesome. Mike.
But the surprises are always bad.
True.
Well, but Microsoft had they matched your prediction. That wasn't bad.
Well, it was incomplete. Okay. My final thought is that it's so easy to get into crime now that it is going to be the first choice for a lot of people, especially younger people. And the problem that we think is out of control right now is going to look like a Model T Ford soon.
All right. Well, those are the predictions. That's what's going to happen. And next year we will do did we get it right? And we'll see how many check marks Mike gives himself next year. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to take the survey. Shoot me an email if you want to have a chat.
Yep.
Have a great day. And if we don't see you before the end of the year, have a great holiday. Have a great new year. Bye-bye, everybody.
Yep. Bye. Thanks for coming.
Happy holidays.